There are no members of the public, so I'm not going to go through the whole spiel about that, but just to say for everyone in the room that there is no planned fire alarm, so therefore if there is a fire alarm, please exit the building and meet over by Queen Victoria. So, first item is apologies for absence. Are there? No.
None.
None. That's good. Second one, declarations of interest.
I'm on the Academy Advisory Board at Penhale Infant School.
And my usual one for me, my partner works at Mayfield and I do some work with them.
And the usual one for me, being on the governing board at Craneswater Junior School. So straight on to the... Oh, actually, let's introduce ourselves. Sorry. Let's go around the room, just in case anyone is watching out there. So start here.
Councillor Tom Coles, representing Fratton Ward. I'm the opposition spokesperson for education.
Councillor Terry Norton, Conservative spokesperson for education.
Caroline Corcoran, Head of Sufficiency, Participation and Resources in the Education Service at the Council.
Hi, Mike Stone, Deputy Director, Education and Early Help.
Alison Edgerton, Group Accountant with the Council with a responsibility for schools' budgets.
Maria Smith, Group Accountant for Children, Families and Education.
Angela Mann, Finance Manager for Children's, Families and Education.
Anna Martin, Local Democracy Officer.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome. So the first item is the School Modernisation and Sufficiency Programme. So, Caroline, if you'd like to present the report, that's great.
Of course. This is our normal quarterly report, looking at how we are proceeding with school condition projects and where we're looking to increase the number of school places in the city in mainstream and special schools. In terms of this current report, the points that I'd like to raise, if we look at the secondary sufficiency schemes to start with, we have 3 secondary sufficiency schemes underway at the moment at Admiral Lord Nelson School, Charter Academy and the Portsmouth Academy. These projects are now all on site and are progressing. There's been a few minor issues, but that's quite normal during a building project, so we're pleased with the progress of those places, which should be available for September 2020. The work has also begun at St Edmunds, where we're funding a minor increase in numbers there, so that's even more secondary school places. This is going really well at the moment, and we have some further feasibility studies underway to see that if we wanted to increase secondary places further, we'll work out exactly how we might do that. In terms of primary sufficiency, we've been doing some feasibility studies. In one of our previous reports and in the last year's primary school place strategy, we suggested that we would do a number of feasibilities, so some of those have already started. We've just undertaken our recent pupil forecasting review, and it seems as if pupil numbers in terms of primary are starting to level out and possibly dip back down, having reached a peak, and therefore we feel it'd be prudent at this point not to continue to do more feasibility studies when it looks like we may not need to do further expansions. And so instead what we're proposing is that the planned feasibility at Flying Bull focuses, instead of on primary mainstream places, it focuses on primary inclusion, and we look at expanding the inclusion facilities there. And the other feasibilities that we do are at Portsdown and Milton Park, but again looking at primary inclusion to meet growing need and demand. So it's a little bit of a reshaping of the we had a small amount of funding to fund the feasibilities, and we're just sort of changing the direction slightly to match where we've got growing demand and make sure we're making best use of that modest amount of money, if that's acceptable. Then in terms of the updated forecasting, just to say, because obviously we talk about the primary school place strategy and the other strategies in this paper, they are all being updated at the moment, and the refreshed strategies should be out within the next sort of 3 weeks. In terms of special schools, I wanted to note to you that we do have an increasing demand for SEND places, and that strategic accommodation review has highlighted the difficulties in expanding the special schools we currently have. But we have managed to do the works at the Lantern, which was the building in Fratton that previously used to house Harbour Fratton, for September, and it was a real credit to the contractor and also to our staff that have worked hard on that to make sure that that got done in time. In terms of school condition projects, we haven't identified any new condition projects since the last report, and if you look at Appendix A, which summarises where we are with all of the projects that I've mentioned, you'll see that at the moment everything is green, which is great, and everything is progressing in a sort of steady and positive manner. I did also just want to mention that with the exceptionally heavy rain that we've had over the last week, we will no doubt be having some urgent works in relation to roofs.
Yeah.
We have some leaky roofs in the city, and we've had schools contact us about the issues they've had over the last week, and I know of at least 2, possibly 3 pieces of condition work that we're going to need to do in maintained schools, where we're going to be having to look at roofs, and I will obviously update you on that, Susie, when I know more, and then it'll be in the next quarterly report for your formal approval.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? It's quite straightforward. Thank you. I think we did mention at the last meeting an official thank you for the contractors who worked on the lantern, but it's worth saying again. It was quite amazing what they pulled off there. Okay, so just to say that I note the progress of this this report, the details in this report, and approve the schemes since the last report. So thank you very much. Is that you done, Caroline? Okie dokie. So next item is the Education Portfolio Budget Monitoring Report for the first quarter.
The report's been noted and sets out the financial position for the education portfolio as at the end of June 2019. The table at paragraph 4.2 sets out the position on the revenue account and shows an overall projected overspend at the end of June of 337,000. The main reason for the overspend is the home to school transport of 372,000. Early help and prevention is now in the education portfolio, and at the end of June projecting an underspend of £87,000. The pressure on the home to school transport budget is being reviewed, and that's set out in paragraph 6.1 and might help the 2019-20 position. However, it's envisaged that the portfolio reserve will have to be used and potentially will only partially mitigate the overspend. And the service recognises that any overspends will need to be contained or carried forward, and officers are working to identify where savings can be made. A summary of the capital programme is set out in Appendix 1, but we've just had the details in agenda item 3. And the position at the end of June showed an underspend against the approved funding of 88 million. I don't know if there's any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just around the home school transport issue there, and a question in regards to what alternatives have been looked at. I know that a lot of these are done through taxis, which seems like it's a good deal, really. It's a guaranteed booking during rush hour, a set fare, and if that's an increasingly expensive way of doing it, then I'm wondering what alternatives have been looked at, really.
Okay. Do you want to say something, Mike?
I mean, in terms of the transport providers, which includes a number of taxi firms, we do recognise that we've got a fairly limited market at the moment. I mean, we basically have, I think, in total 8 providers that we use, of which 4 or 5 we use, regularly. So that includes taxi firms, but it also includes companies like Pete's Airlink and I think it's MCK that does a lot of the sort of minibus routes. And because that is such a limited market, it's obviously not very competitive either. So when we do have a route that we want to put out to the market, we've only got this very limited market we can go to. So We're doing a number of things this year, and one of which is about how we can broaden the market. So we've started to engage with a company that has supported 12 other local authorities, including Milton Keynes that we went to see in the summer, where they were in a similar sort of position, and they expanded their market from, I think it was about 10 up to about 35, and that has had an impact on their competitiveness, which we want to have a look at. So that's certainly one area we're exploring. We're also looking at now a detailed look at some of the cohorts of people that are travelling on those taxis, minibuses and so forth, and to see actually, is it appropriate for them? Are there other methods of transport that we need to look at? So, for example, that includes Key Stage 3 pupils at the Harbour School, whether we should be starting to look at other forms of transport, such as buses, and encouraging more independent travel. So we're doing a review there. We haven't got, we in the past we've revised the policy and we've cut out most of our discretionary spend. We don't really have much more room to manoeuvre on that front because we are now down to sort of our statutory duties. So there is some scope, but you know, what I would say is it's a huge challenge. You know, we've managed to, we've always been overspent in the homeschool transport budget. The budget has never changed. Well, a little bit where we've moved budget from other areas within education, and the demand has continued to rise. Yeah. So that's been the issue for us. You know, we've put in all sorts of measures to try and manage that pressure, but demand has increased, so the overspend still exists. So it is a challenge, and we are doing everything we can this year to try and address it. The other piece of work we're doing is the Systems Development Service is having a look at this and doing a scoping review in October to determine whether they want to do a detailed review in January. And that may well provide us with further efficiencies, so we're doing that as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And just to follow up if I can, and we're confident that all drivers are CRB checked and vehicles are safe.
Well, yes. So all drivers need to have an enhanced DBS, and through the current licensing arrangements that we have in the city, that is a requirement through those arrangements. However, internal audit have picked up on this, and they are not giving us. Well, they believe it's a risk at the moment, and not giving us full assurance on that issue. So we are meeting this week, Friday, to talk through those risks. To see whether or not we need to put in some additional checks to ensure that we have the compliance that audit are requiring of us. That will require some further investment if we're going to do that, and there is a possible solution. We're also, the provider that I mentioned that is helping us to potentially broaden the market, they do offer also an end-to-end service, including the contract management, payments, as well as looking at how we can broaden that market. And Milton Keynes, for example, use them. And they also, as part of that arrangement, ensure that there is full compliance. There are every driver has to have an enhanced DBS, and that is on the system. So we may be looking at something like that going forward. But in the meantime, we're thinking about a short-term measure, which could be, for example, spot checks to ensure that we are compliant. But yeah, we accept we don't have full assurance at the moment, and we are looking to address that.
Thank you, Mike.
Sorry, just to come back one more time. So, and on that. So it's the registered drivers that are doing the sessions, not a stand-in. I know some share taxis. You know, if someone's off and they're replaced with a driver, I'll be making sure that is a DBS check.
Well, that's the. I mean, they have to comply with the licence arrangements, so that those drivers have to have enhanced DBS checks. Right. What I can't tell you is we're not checking every single driver. You know, so. We rely on those arrangements, and that's the risk that has been identified by audit. Yep.
Thank you. No, just to follow up on that, I know it came up in last Friday's meeting, and I do understand that the leader of the council got Alison Jeffrey to give an update that went out today to all councillors. So as soon as that information came back, all those actions were taken. Coming back to the actual issue in terms of the money, I think, I mean, I obviously agree with everything that Mike said, and I think there's some really interesting stuff out there. I was at a briefing last week, which was basically an IT company looking at how IT can actually help with safeguarding issues, but also independence, etc., etc. There's loads of ideas going into the mix, but essentially it comes down to, it's not just a transport issue, as we all know. It needs plus numbers, and that's what we've got to navigate our way through, is that all these children have needs that needs to be taken into account when we're trying to be more efficient in how we get them to and from school. But I think there is a real kind of sense of that maybe an individual sitting in a taxi with a chaperone to and from school is something that we could definitely look at, whilst making sure that the safety of kids is paramount. And I know I've said to Mike, I went to one of the special schools once, and it literally was like a taxi rank at the end of the day. And it's like, really, is this most efficient when we're so overspent in this area? But we are definitely looking at every which way, and it's happening all over the country. It's the biggest kind of pattern of overspending, I think. So we will see if we can endeavour to lead the way in sorting it out. Anyway.
And just to add, when you do some benchmarking work, we're not. I think we manage it pretty well with the budget we have, and if you compare to ourselves to the local authorities, we are certainly not an outlier. We are probably, I think, in terms of value for money, we're at the other end, aren't we? So we do well on that front. But yeah, we need to do more. We recognise that.
Exactly. Thank you. That was a good conversation. So item. Where am I now? What was I meant to do? Note that forecast revenue and capital positions at the end of June 2019 with the variance and pressure explanations. So item 5 is dedicated schools grant, Q1 budget monitoring. Alison.
Hello. This report sets out the forecast budget position for the dedicated schools grant for the first quarter of 2019-20 as at the end of June 2019. The budget was approved in January with subsequent revisions in July 2019. And whilst these budget revisions were approved after the closure of the first quarter's accounts, the budget adjustments have been included within the report to ensure that the forecast reflects the recent decisions. Overall, there's a small overspend of about £30,000, and that is currently being met through the use of the carry forward. The reason for the overspend relates mostly to high needs, in particular to the Element 3 top-up that is paid to pupils in mainstream schools and the out-of-city providers, and the reasons for those are detailed in the report. As the end of the quarter comes part-way through the summer term, there are a number of budgets that we're unable to forecast as an out-term position, as we do not have the end-of-term pupil information. This relates mostly to early years, Element 3 top-up for special schools, inclusion centres and alternative provision settings. Therefore, those budgets are currently being forecast to come in on budget, but they're expected to change over the course of the year, and the Q2 report will give you an update on that. Overall, the budget is where we would expect it to be at this time of the financial year, and the Cabinet member is asked to note the forecast at the year-end position and any accompanying explanations within the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments from anyone? I think it's quite straightforward. I think I can safely note the report, and thank you very much for everyone's work on their respective reports. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of a very, very quick meeting. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and thank you for all the work on the reports, and I'll see you next time.